Hi, I'm Shanen and I support people who have experienced domestic abuse or who are experiencing domestic abuse. I'm a domestic abuse survivor myself and I'm here to tell you a bit about my story. A few family members had voiced their opinions on my new partner, saying about his character and the way he was and what he might be capable of, just voicing their concerns for my safety, really. I think early on I noticed that he had a short temper, and it would be silly things like, out road raging, but it would be, everyone has road rage, but this would be to, a high level of road rage, and actually, to that point where he couldn't calm down. And I think those are the little elements that make you feel unsafe. I think one of the prominent traits that my ex-partner had was jealousy that stemmed from an insecurity of his own, and he used to project that onto me, so I would constantly, get accused of stuff that I hadn't done. Jealousy for people that were really irrelevant to my life as well, and he had to know absolutely everything. I think the jealousy was building and in our relationship, and towards the first incident of physical violence. We were at a friend's house. It was one of his friends. The friend asked me to come out for a cigarette in the garden. He jumped up and he said, "That's my girlfriend," even though we was just innocently going outside. And we decided to take the drinks back to my flat. I took myself to bed, but that wasn't good enough for them. They wanted to carry on the party and they wanted me to stay awake. He had been staying at my house quite a lot and bringing stuff back, and that's another thing. Looking back, it all moved really, really quickly and become quite intense quite soon on. He went into the drawer in my bedroom and took out a shotgun because I was asleep, or trying to get to sleep in bed, and at that point probably pretending out of fear that I was asleep. He smacked me on the legs with it and said, "Get up." Well, his friend, he said, "Leave her alone, that's unfair." He didn't like that there was someone else sticking up for me. So at that point I'd got out of the bed because I was crying in physical pain. I was over near my dressing table and he smacked me in the face with the gun. The force of that made me hit the back of my head onto my dressing table and actually knocked me out. When I come around, he was beating his friend with the gun. My face had blown out massively. I rushed to the bathroom just to look. It was quite terrible, really. I thought, I have to manage this situation the best I can. His friend was unconscious, nearly unconscious on the floor with a pool of blood around his head. And I had to try and calm him down to a point where, otherwise he was going to kill him. But as soon as he seen my face, he kind of started coming down a little bit and, crying about it. Looking back, I probably don't think he had that much remorse, and I managed to get him into the kitchen, de-arm him with the weapon, and by that point his friend, I don't know how, but had managed to leave the flat. Now, in the aftermath of that, for the next 2 weeks, he said, "You're not allowed to go out. People can't see your face." Actually, if my family had seen at that point, they would have definitely have intervened. the next 2 weeks were very isolating, and I think that's when he used that as a form to kind of intensify his isolation and control over me. I see my nan every day. She called me and said, I haven't seen you for 2 weeks. Like, where have you been? So sorry. Even my friends had been texting me and saying, you know, we think that he's controlling you. Like, we haven't seen you in such a long time. Let's meet up. And I would always be making excuses. But actually, looking back, I thought that it was me making the excuses, but actually I always had him in the ear, like, let's do this instead. I remember he would pick me up from uni, take me to uni, from A to B, everywhere we went. Actually, he was using my car, but I wasn't allowed to drive. After that injury, I'd kind of been internalising in myself that I needed to leave, but I needed to do so safely. I started seeing my kind of friends and family a little bit more, and I made the choice that I was gonna leave the relationship. What I know now is that at that point of leaving or choosing to leave a relationship, an abusive relationship, you're further at risk, and that risk is heightened because that perpetrator is losing that control, and that's exactly what happened. I hadn't heard from him for probably, 24 hours, which wasn't normal either, because he would constantly contact me, even, bad contact, and it would be abusive contact or, love bombing and trying to get that cycle to continue again. But my door went, and it was him, and he said, if you don't answer the door, I'm going to kick off in front of all of your neighbours, which, no one wants that. So I undone the door, and I was already in my towel, so I was in that kind of vulnerable state anyway. And I said to him, like, all of your stuff's there, you need to take it and you need to go because it's over. And he said, you can't leave me, and just laughed as if that was never a possibility, and actually that wasn't a choice that I was able to make. For the next couple of hours, he really, tried to exert that control and power over me. He sat me on a chair, and I wasn't allowed to, look at certain points around the room. He would give me something to focus on, and my eye line had to stay solely on that. So every time that my eye line might flicker somewhere else, he would punish me for that. I was put in a shower, cold shower. He strangled me. I think after he'd done that, and I begged him to stop, he kind of changed his persona, and he was very calm and collected, but actually quite sinister. He took me to my cupboard, and he said, you're going to have to stay in here now. And I was crying, screaming even, because it was so dark and so scary. I was screaming, maybe making too much noise. So he sat in front of me, and he was about an inch away from my face, and he just stared there for a good 10-15 minutes, just that close to my face, and making consistent eye contact. It was just exerting that fear. And then he said, that's it, you're going and you're not coming back. Up you get ready, you've got 2 minutes. At that point I'm like, okay, this is my way out. I'm trying to safety plan my way out. I'm trying to think, what can I do? I got dressed really quickly. I put my keys in my bra, and I thought, I'll get to the car really quickly. But actually at the same time, I'm risk assessing, what if that goes wrong, and what's he gonna do? And he says, I need your car keys. So I thought, oh no, how am I gonna get this out? So I was like, yeah, well, I won't be too long in the drawer trying to get it out. Gave him the car keys. He said, when we walk outside of this flat, you walk 2 steps behind me at every time, and if you try and run, it's not going to end well for you. Well, it wasn't going to end well for me anyway, because he was going to take me to the back roads and I wasn't coming back. He asked me to take something sentimental of my son's with me, and I just said no, because I didn't want to admit defeat at that point. When we got to the car, he asked me for a lighter, and I said there's one in the front. And as he leant over to the front of the car, it enabled me to run past him, and I just ran for my life, screaming. I ran to the nearest door, and then ended up hiding behind a wheelie bin. And he didn't spot me, but he ran past. So that enabled me to run back in the opposite direction. And thankfully, someone was reversing into their drive. An absolute stranger, never met him in my life. And I said, "Excuse me, can you give me a lift?" And he looked at my feet. I had no shoes. I was soaking wet. And he said, "Just get in." And he gave me a lift to my friend's house. I managed to call my mum, and my mum was in the car with him. He had my phone, my keys, and he had my family looking for me. And everyone was asking me, what had happened, what had gone on, but at that point no one knew anything. As far as they were concerned, maybe we had an argument. He would constantly harass me, my mum, my mum's husband, my brother, family members, friends, and actually then they would be contacting me or letting me know. So I didn't have a break from him at all, and it wasn't in his best interests to let me forget him. My mum wanted to call the police a lot earlier on than I did. I was trying to manage it myself. I thought that would make things worse. I was really scared, and as a parent as well, you're told that they'll say that you're a bad mum. They'll expose you for all of these things that you've let go or you've let them do. So I was at that point trying to manage myself and keep everyone else safe, and I felt a huge responsibility, and like I'd brought this person into our lives, and I felt so guilty. I think my mum got a phone call from him, and he said, "I'm coming to get her, and if any of you stand in the way, you're going to get shot." My mum rang the police, and the police, they visited me, and I was still, denying that anything could even happened. I was like, absolutely not. I blame my mum. I said, she's made things worse, but actually all she was doing is trying to protect me and her family. I think it took me a couple of weeks and a couple of, talks with my family and some space away from him to realise that actually all of these people have your best interests at heart. They can see it a lot quicker than you can, and they can recognise these behaviours and how bad someone is for you a lot sooner than you recognise that yourself. Having the police intervention was really daunting. I done an ABE interview and told them everything that had happened. An ABE interview is for vulnerable people. So what that allows you to do is to sit in front of a camera, as opposed to, having to later down the line be present in court and be asked questions. So that's kind of, your witness statement there and then. It's for vulnerable people. It's to allow them that opportunity without having to rehash and re-traumatise themselves in court. The police officer allowed me to have special measures put in place like that, and that really helped me to support a police prosecution, and they were really, really supportive, and I worked really closely with the police to ensure that he, was brought to justice. That fear as well of repercussions from having the police involved was quite scary and daunting, but actually they managed my risk and my situation so well, and they were so aware of all of the other elements, and they really made sure that my safety and my family's safety was paramount. They was really, really supportive. The staff that they assigned me to, staff that specialised in abuse, someone that can just understand as well, really went a long way. And I think there are other support agencies available that can support you whilst you're supporting a police prosecution. People that specialise in domestic abuse and people that understand, people that you can just pick up the phone to and speak to. It really, really helps me to go and see it through to the end, and actually seeing it through to the end and going to court, and the empowerment and the reaffirming of your boundaries and taking control back of your life, that really, really does, that lives beyond the sentence. After that person served that sentence, it's, even to this day, I still feel that empowerment for going through with it. Overcoming the adversities that I've experienced with regards to domestic abuse has enabled me to put my experience and life experiences into helping other people, people that are experiencing or who have experienced domestic abuse themselves. I think domestic abuse survivors have a journey that possibly never ends, but it does just get easier. That journey sometimes starts from when you've left that abusive relationship, and actually overcoming those adversities and channeling that triumph over adversities. Those are the silver linings that really empower people to continue on their journeys to freedom.